realize now that my kids aren't paranoid about me working anymore.
Yeah.
And
Oh my gosh.
it took some time to kind of heal that I wouldn't call it paranoia, but that worry. Now they're not as worried as much anymore, and they know now that, hey, there are certain times that work is going to have to come before family, because this is our livelihood. This is how I pay the bills. This is I take care of you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten a lot better at learning how to balance them.
Hey guys, welcome back to part 2 of this week's episode on Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. I started to say welcome back to Murph in the Morning with Game of Crimes, but that's not the right thing to say. So as you heard yesterday, we got Mike Denton on here, former U.S. Army paratrooper who served in Afghanistan and is currently a police officer of the Orlando Police Department, one of my favorite agencies here. You hear me talk about them all the time. I've had the honor and pleasure to meet the chief, some of the executive staff, and some of the officers, getting to meet police officers all around the area here. And last year I had the distinct honor, and this truly was an honor, to be the keynote speaker at their Blue Line Gala. And that's their annual fundraiser for not only Orlando Police Department, but for the sheriff's offices in Orange County, Seminole County, and Osceola County. That's the counties that surround, or Orlando's in Orange County, but the other two counties abut Orange County. So anything I can do for OPD or any of the other agencies out here, if you listen to this, just let me know. I was a cop for 38 years. I don't know how to do a whole lot else. So if I can do things to help other police officers, I truly want to do that. That's a passion that I hope I carry until the day I die. If you listened to yesterday's episode, if you didn't, go back and listen to it. You need to hear that before you hear today, because we're talking about Mike's career in the Army. He was in there for 4 years, but he spent roughly 15 months, right, Mike, over in Afghanistan?
Yes, sir. Just shy of 15 months.
And we're going into the story of the Battle of Wanat, which is in which province is it?
The Nuristan province.
Nuristan province. And you're not too far from Pakistan there, right?
No, sir. Not too far. We split between our platoons, like working in the Kunar and Nuristan provinces.
Yeah. And these are old, thousands of year old smuggling routes that were used from Pakistan into Afghanistan. And I understand the trail leads all the way to Kabul, the capital of Afghanistan. One of the things that I brought up on yesterday's episode, I'll bring up again. This is the book that Mike recommended I read, The Chosen Few by Gregg Zoroya. I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the beginning of the book, you got to lay the background to get you to where you need to be so you understand what you're getting ready to read. But once you get to where the action starts, you can't put it down. I'm not a fast reader. You can see I got it on Kindle. I probably read this in 2 days. It just, you can't put it down. It's, you want to know what happens next. You want to know, unfortunately, who's not going to come back, but you do want to know who's going to come back and what the outcome was of it. So that's where we are. What has happened is the American base is pulling back to a little village called Wanat, and they're trying to establish, would you call it a forward operating base or a fire base? What would you call that?
A forward operating base. It started off as a vehicle patrol base.
Okay, so
we were building it into, that was going to be a FOB. It was going to be there permanently to kind of be with the people.
Yeah. One thing I like about that book, there's pictures, and you can see there's drawings of where the base sits. There's pictures of where the base sat, and you see how it's in the low ground, and you got these mountains all around it, which provides hiding spots, shoot sites for the enemy, for the Taliban to shoot down at the Americans. They did establish an Overwatch base, which they called Topside. And even that wasn't as high up as you could go. So there's still the opportunity for the bad guys to shoot down on our troops. And let me just say here at the beginning, if you listened to yesterday's episode, you heard me say this. I'm not criticizing our military. I'm so freaking proud of them. That's why I bring Mike on. That's why I bring on all these other military heroes that we've had on here over the past 3.5 years. And I will continue to do so. I've got some studs lined up that I think you're going to be impressed with as much as you are with Mike and some of the other folks we've had on here. So please don't accept any of this as me criticizing. I'm just trying to understand. One of the things that's gotten me through life is common sense. And we all know common sense is not common, and I don't always have it. But I'm just trying to understand why certain things were done. And that's one of the biggies is, why are we putting our troops down? Why are we not up in the highest spots shooting down versus being on the bottom where the bad guys? You always want that high ground advantage when you're in a firefight. Okay, enough said of that. The other thing that gripped me is, especially as I was putting my notes together for today's interview, Mike, is one of the things I think that made us, whether you think we succeeded in Vietnam or not, I'm still proud of our troops, the way that the Americans treated our Vietnam veterans coming back. Those people should be in jail. If I had my druthers, I'd probably shoot them. But that's just Murph, because you're disrespecting people who are over there risking their lives so you can run around and run your freaking mouth about stuff you have no idea about because you haven't been over and experienced it.
Yeah.
If you did go over and experience it and then you want to run your mouth, I got some respect for you because you did. But we all know that's not what, well, you may be too young to remember that, Mike, but I remember. I was old enough to make the last draft for Vietnam, and I think my number was 123. And that year, this was 1974, they drafted only up to maybe 60 or 70, and it's because we were pulling out at that time.
Oh.
Vietnam was about over. So, but just the fact that anybody would treat our veterans like that, I don't like the way our veterans are treated now. I tell you what, though, the VA hospital here in Orlando, over here in Medical City.
Yeah, that new one's really nice.
It looks like something out of a Batman. It looks like Gotham.
Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, they you can be mad at the government, but don't hate on the troop.
Exactly.
Yeah, they've done a good job. From the old hospital I used to go to over in Lake Baldwin to the new Lake Nona one now is significantly better.
You know what? Our next door neighbor over on this side is a psychiatrist over at the VA, and you may know her, but I'm not going to mention her name here because she doesn't know I'm talking about her. Very nice lady, though. So, okay, so we're back to the Wanat base here. Or they're in the process of trying to build the base. You've just got rudimentary HESCOs set up for now, right?
Yeah, that was down on the mortar site. It's kind of where they had the HESCOs kind of going up. Where I was at and at the OP, a lot of it was just sandbag walls.
And you guys they actually brought in was it the tow weapons they brought in?
Yes, we had our Destin company. It's pretty much a motor company, but they have all the tow missiles. So we actually had a tow missile truck assigned to our platoon, which actually one of the guys there and I slept right next to each other in basic training, and he was on that truck. And so we had that with us, yeah. And we had our mortar section out and had a mortar tube set up. And then we all of our trucks had either the Mark 19s, the 400mm grenades, or 50 cal machine guns on top of them.
And those tow missiles, those are wire-guided missiles that are extremely accurate and extremely devastating. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All that firepower sounds wonderful. I mean, I'm sure it gave you a little bit more sense of security.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are in the Badlands. You're in an Indian country.
Yeah, and we're within reach of the howitzers from back at Camp Blessing.
But as I read, the mortarmen had not had the opportunity yet to set up grids to know, okay, if they're shooting, if we're taking fire from this area, this is the settings we need to put on the tube to launch mortars over to that. They hadn't had that opportunity yet, right?
It's funny. There was so much going on that later on when you learn, none of us knew what was going on at any other station. There was just so much going on. We were so focused on our area. When you talk to guys later on, you're like, I didn't know that happened. And they're like, well, I didn't know that happened over there. And what were you guys doing over here? And so it was actually really interesting because there was stuff that I had learned years later about what was going on at some of the other posts that we had, or the setups that we had.
That is so ironic that, and I'm just going to go off on a tangent just for a second here. Well, maybe a minute. But in 1989, we got into a shootout inside of a house down in Hialeah, one of the suburbs of Miami, and my partner was hit twice with 45 caliber slugs, and our informant was killed during this little firefight we had. And my partner ended up being off for about a year, had to go through multiple operations. He took a round below the elbow and above the elbow in the same arm, his right arm. It severed 2 of the 3 nerves in there. And he was able to come back to work after a year. His arm is still screwed up to this day. But that was in 1989. We had him on the show here about 2.5 years ago on Game of Crimes. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, that's the first time he and I ever discussed the shooting.
Wow.
I mean, when he came back to work, we were still partners. We were partners till I went to South America. And it wasn't that it was the topic we were just trying to avoid. It's just like, yeah, that shit happened. Let's move on. So, but then after we do talk, it was amazing how we remember things differently.
Yeah.
So, and it kind of coincides with what you're talking about there. I don't mean to digress into my story because
no,
we're here to talk about your story.
Please, absolutely. But yeah, it's I actually haven't read the whole book, and I've tried to read parts of it, and it's tough.
I bet.
And it's tough. It's weird. It's not a lot of what happened at the battle, but it's when you read about the fun times that we had with each other.
Yeah.
That's always kind of hard and difficult to read.
Yeah.
At least for me, it is.
My partner, I hope he doesn't get mad at me for saying this, but the Narcos series on Netflix, the first 2 seasons talk about our hunt for Pablo Escobar.
Mm-hmm.
And my partner has not been able to watch all 2 seasons yet.
Wow.
And that's been out for, I don't know how many, 7 years, 8 years, whatever it is. And here's the other thing. My wife and I, we watched it all when it first came out. We've tried to watch it a second time, and I just don't find it interesting anymore. I don't know why. I don't know where that's coming from, but it's like you and I have talked before. I think God gives us all abilities to handle certain things, and I don't think He'll ever task you with more than you can handle yourself. So here in Wanat, what's happening on July 13th, 2008 is the base, still the early morning hours. Was it still dark?
Light had just kind of broken, and so my squad leader and I were on Sergeant of the Guard. And so I went with them and we kind of made sure everybody's up, everything's good to go, and just kind of, you're kind of in charge while everybody's down. But we always do stand to, big prevalent time to get hit is right before dawn. And everybody's up. And first light had kind of just cracked.
Wow. Wow, what a way to start a new day. And we're talking odds here, ladies and gentlemen. I think you said there's 49 good guys. Well, I've read that there's as many as 300 Taliban are coming in on our folks there at the base. And this is it base? Kaler?
We called it Vehicle Patrol Base Kaler at the time.
Okay, Vehicle Patrol Base, okay.
Cop Kaler, we're going to officially call it for Combat Outpost.
And now this massive firefight ensues, and these folks, they're zeroed in. They know what weapons you have, don't they? They know about the tow missile, the truck, the mortars,
see everything,
the machine guns.
Yeah, they can see all of it.
And they're very successful in targeting those, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
I remember watching the tow missile truck explode, and it looked like we thought that they were shooting white phosphorus at us through the mortars because watch the white smoke pop up, but that was the tow missile going off and some of the missiles firing off, and I could see that from across out into the field from my position.
Wow. In that book, it has a picture of that tow truck after everything's said and done, and it's just melted to the ground. Yeah,
completely burnt down.
Oh my gosh. Now, you guys are pretty much being overrun, aren't you? I mean, the odds are just so overwhelming. The amount of RPGs, the rocket-propelled grenades that are being fired in at you, the small arms fire.
It was a constant barrage. It was a constant barrage of explosions and machine gun fire, and it didn't feel like it ever kind of let up. And that's bad guys versus pumping rounds back at them. Kind of just pick a direction and shoot because it's coming from everywhere. And so kind of like going into like Ryan's story, like he held those guys off from us because they taken the high ground into the OP, and those guys were fighting hard up there at the OP. Our guys were, and had they gotten that high ground and they got into the OP, that could have been bad for us.
Well, and in the book, I forget how many times guys kept running up there and to see what was going on, and they're actually, it's like 4 or 5 times that, and it's probably more than that. It's almost like reinforcements coming, but it might only be 2 people.
So that's where Jonathan Hovader and our platoon leader, Jonathan Brostrom, were killed. They went up there to go out what was going on and kind of reinforce it. And ultimately they were killed up there for myself and my squad leader and Sergeant Garcia and Specialist Sones made our way into there to go kind of backfill that and go kind of hold that position.
And in this Overwatch position, there's several different levels, right?
Yeah, I can't remember if it's like 3 or 4 terrace levels that it goes up, but from our position, in charge of kind of controlling the traffic that comes in and out. But if you turned around, you could look and you could see back up to the OP. And so when the firefight started, I remember looking back and you just saw explosion after explosion up there, and I saw was dust, and yeah, they were just constantly getting hit up there.
So there was a portion of that Overwatch position you guys called the Crow's Nest.
Yeah, it was a little bit higher up. It was a sandbag, kind of like a circle, and it held one of the 240 machine guns up there.
And that's where you ended up, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. Before getting hurt, that was the final position I was in after going up to the OP.
And then, well, if you don't mind, do you mind going through how you got hurt?
Yeah. So To kind of start it off, sorry, a little awkward talking about me.
I'm gonna tell you, it's like pulling teeth will get you to talk, man. Which the captain warned me about that.
Yeah,
But
he's
not
a
a bad thing. This is a humble man that we're talking to today.
yeah. No, I got a lot of respect for Captain Jennering. He's a good man.
Yep.
And so kind of started off about 4:30ish in the morning. I'd gone back to the traffic control point. Knew that there was an element of bad guys that had come down the ridgeline. They were watching them through the thermals on the tow truck, and they set up like the mortar site up there, back to the south. And so everybody was up, getting ready. And I walked back to the traffic control point. I sat down to eat, take a couple bite of MREs, take my helmet off, and then here comes the first RPG down the valley. And that's when it all kicked off. And then just from there was just a constant barrage of explosions, machine gun fire. Actually, years later, a video surfaced, and it's still out there, of the Taliban videotaping their attack on us. And it's about 10, 15 minutes long, but it shows all the different vantage points that they had. And you can hear the amount of gunfire and explosions, and you can see the explosions. You hear all the gunfire. You see where they're running around. And one of our guys found it years later, a couple years later on YouTube. And so that kicks off, and just the amount of bravery from the guys is incredible. I'll tell you who's a really good storyteller about everything that happened. Oh, it's just my buddy Ryan. Travels around the country. He was awarded the Medal of Honor. So he travels around the country, and he speaks at the Army College. He speaks at West Point. He speaks at all these. He's gone back to Italy to talk to the guys, and he is an incredible man that tells the story and the bravery of the men very, very, very well. Oh, sorry. To kind of get off track with that, but
No.
You kind of pick a spot and you just start looking for muzzle flashes and you start shooting. And so this is going on for a while. You're kind of finding spots, I'm trying to lob grenades back at the terraces. The houses across the river, you can see muzzle flashes coming out of there. So you're trying to shoot at those. We had a terrace wall right behind us that was getting hit with rounds. And I remember a tracer round had come in and was burning inside the wall right behind us. And I was like, oh man, that's not good. Looking at my buddy who's next to us and like, oh, did you see that dude? And trying to crack jokes here and there, just kind of break the tension. And so our truck had a 50 cal in it, and we watched the glass spider from like a Dishka, which is their Russian version of a 50 cal.
Right.
And so we all start yelling for Hamby, but of course, he can't hear us because of all the gunfire going on. So my team leader actually rushes out and goes down into this brush to drag Hamby to come back to us up in the fighting position. That same team leader, my buddy Brian Hissong, jumps out, runs down the terrace wall a little bit, and he fires an AT-4 rocket back up into one of the houses behind us. And this is going on everywhere. Like, these guys are just doing all this heroic stuff. And so after a while, a couple of our guys come running down from the OP, and they say that everybody up there is dead. And so we kind of drag them in. We kind of start treating them a little bit. That's when the tow missile truck explodes, and we think they're dropping white phosphorus on us. And then that radio transmission that you mentioned about Ryan comes across the radio. And he says, I can hear them behind me. This is my last radio transmission. And so just before that, Lieutenant Brostrom and Hovader had gone up there. And they had been killed. And then my squad leader, Sam Rue, grabs me and two guys from 3rd Squad, Sergeant Garcia and Sones, and says, hey, we're going to go up there and we're going to go up to the OP, and we're going to help. We're going to go see if we can kind of hold that position and grab Ryan. And 4 of us made our way up there and inside the OP, and it was destroyed.
But you went to the crow's nest and you did your best to return fire.
So as soon as we got up there, Garcia and Sones went straight to Ryan, kind of helped start treating him. And he had, his legs were mangled up pretty good. And and then I went around and started taking ammo off our casualties, kind of checking them. And I got to Hovader. That one hurt. He was a very, 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 very good friend of mine. And that one hurt a lot. And seeing him and sorry.
No, don't be sorry. My God, nobody
16 years, boy, and it still hits.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I took his ammo off of him. I knew I didn't need to see his face. I knew who he was, and I told him I loved him. I took that same bandolier you're talking about. I had he was a grenadier too, and I had to take that off of him. Took some ammo, took some AR mags off of him, and then turned around and kind of went down this big, massive. You look at the pictures of the OP. There's this big, massive rock wall, and I found our platoon leader. Find Brostrom laying there, and I take his radio off of him because I didn't know how much equipment we needed or how long we were going to be up there for, and kind of did like a half-hearted radio check. But I remember coming around that rock wall, just kind of sent a couple rounds. I kind of put my rifle out in front of me and kind of sent around a couple rounds around there. I didn't know if this is where the guys were going to come from. And I turned around and I met up with my squad leader and I gave him the radio. And I was like, hey, I don't need this. And when I got up into the crow's nest, I found Jonathan Ayers jumped over the machine gun, and he'd ultimately been killed. And I remember picking him up underneath his arms and setting him up against the wall. And then I grabbed the 240, put some oil in there, put a fresh belt of 7.62 in there, and just kind of returned fire as needed. And we kind of held that position for a while until the blast came in on us.
All this is happening before air assets get there. Is that right?
Yep, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was up at the OP when my squad leader was yelling at me that Apaches were coming in.
So an RPG comes in towards you, right?
Mm-hmm. I remember I was up there in the gun, and I just happened out of the corner of my eye, I saw an orange flash, and I just kind of tucked my head, and that come in and hit us.
And did it knock you out?
It kind of rattled me pretty good, knocked me out of the crow's nest, and then another blast came in, and then now just the dust is kicked up everywhere, and now just trying to kind of get our bearing and figure out what's going on. And I could hear my squad leader yelling, and so he and I linked up outside the OP. There was a massive wall to get in. And so to kind of backtrack, as we make our way up the terraces, like we have to run in the open along this terrace wall to even get inside the OP in and of itself, which was quite the run because the gunfire is going on, but there was a smaller hole, maybe 2 feet by 2 feet, and we were able to crawl our way out of there. And we both knew we had been hurt, and his groin had taken a good bit of shrapnel, so we kind of patched each other up. I see that my bone is messed up in my hand. I've got a nick on my vein in my arm that's kind of spewing out. My eardrum had been blown out. My foot had gotten hurt. Some shrapnel in my hip. My hip really hurt. Like, oh man, I'm too young for hip pain right now. And kind of helped each other out. And then it was like, and then I started I was like, I don't have a gun. I need a gun. And I found a rifle on the ground, and I picked it up, and I remember I had a double feed. I'm like, you got to shit me. Like of all the times. So I was able to actually clear the malfunction, put a new mag in, and I just turned the rifle into 3-round burst. And that's the way I kept it, because I'm having to shoot left-handed now. And we made our way back inside the OP. And man, when you talk about the love that you have for your brothers, you get back in there, and we got Sones over to us, kind of found him a rifle, gave him some magazines. I didn't know at the time. I guess the rifle was messed up, but I didn't notice that at the time. Hey, I don't know how much ammo. Hey, man, here's a couple mags. I don't know how long we're going to be up here for. But I watched Hitz talking to Garcia. Garcia was already in shock. His injuries were so bad that but laying there watching Ryan just kind of talking to him, and got to the point where it's kind of like, hey man, like we need to drag you over here. And so we were able to grab Ryan and bring him over to us, kind of assessing him real quick. And he gets back on the radio, starts talking, telling us what we need. My squad leader is still trying to talk to Garcia, and I don't remember the timeline, maybe 10 minutes, give or take 5, before more reinforcements came up to us. And it was so good to see those guys. But just the fact, man, taking it to your, just these guys just rushing, like no matter what, just here and there and here and there. Everybody's rushing to help out their buddies. And that's why I say I serve with some pretty incredible men. that give their lives for each other and without hesitation to do it too. And the medevac pilots, man, to talk about them coming in and landing their medevac birds and taking the gunfire for us, and the flight medics just throwing their rifles down. I don't need it, and coming out and grabbing us and pulling us into the bird, and just and then some more of the platoons in the battalion getting spun up and coming out to help us, and some powerful stuff.
I mean, just trying to get to the Overwatch tower, that's a suicide run.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
you're out in the open.
Yeah, you kind of know that. You already knew that nothing good was happening up there, and that's where we took 8 of our KIA. Was up there at the OP in Abad. Sergio Abad was killed down at the mortar site. Yeah, wow. 8 of our KIA were up at the OP. Then to talk to Ryan and the guys and read about their bravery up there, helping each other, was incredible. Everybody fighting hard.
Yeah.
I mean, everywhere, fighting hard. I give my company commander props. There's Apache video of them coming in and how calm he was on the radio, talking to them, not freaking out, not losing his mind. Talking.
Professionalism.
But everybody at every post fighting hard for each other.
Wow.
It was
people hear me talk all the time here on the show about the law enforcement culture and the brotherhood and sisterhood that we have, and it's the same in the military. It's probably the same in any job that's hazardous. I mean, you could be a lineman on the electrical lines. I'm pretty sure they're probably pretty tight.
Yeah.
Any job that carries an element of danger, and you go out the same folks, you become closer than family, you go through the same life or death situations every day, and you survive. It's just, I don't know of any stronger bond.
Yeah. It's, I spent 2 years of my life with those guys.
Yeah.
And we become super close, super quick. And that's something I don't think people realize outside of the first responder, military. And, I'll tell you what, we just had the hurricane come through here. That's a thankless job.
Yep.
Those bonds form super quick. And when we say brotherhood, like that's an understatement. That you are willing to die for somebody, to give your life for somebody, and to see that and to watch what the guys do for each other. That's incredible.
Yeah. One of the things I was reading about you had made mention, I think it's tattooed on your arm, John 15:13.
Yes, sir.
What's that verse say in the Bible?
For greater love hath no man to lay down his life for his friends.
There you go.
I've got it. So I've got a memorial tattoo. My whole sleeve is dedicated to the guys.
Wow. And there's more than 9 names on there, right?
I have 11 on there.
Yeah.
So we lost 5 guys from 1st Platoon. And then actually in September of 2007, one of the guys, when I first got to the company, he was a squad leader. He was an E6. So when we got promoted to E7, he got transferred over to Battle Company. And in September of 2007, he was killed by sniper fire. So he always kind of been a part of 2nd Platoon, and that's what he did with his first deployment. So to honor him, I got his name on my arm as well.
Yeah, that's an honor. Based on either experience or what you learned, a typical firefight, has anybody ever told you how long a typical firefight lasts?
No, sir.
So as
could
30
be quick.
minutes? Yeah.
It could be quick, and then it could be a while. And
so typically like when we're cops, you get the gun battle on the street, it's over in a matter of a few minutes typically. Yeah.
This could last for a little while.
How long did one not last?
A couple hours.
It was over 4 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were out there for a couple days.
Oh my gosh. I can't imagine.
For us that got wounded and transported out there was a couple hours. And it was quite the day.
I just want to throw some numbers out here to our listeners. So as a result of the chosen few being in Afghanistan, and a lot of this was at Wanat, but some other battles as well, you ended up with 2 Medal of Honor recipients. 2 folks received the Distinguished Service Cross. 14, including our guest today, Mike Denton, received Silver Stars. This one is pretty amazing. 34 Bronze Stars for Valor, 16 alone at Wanat were received, and 66 Purple Hearts. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we actually ended up having a third Medal of Honor from the battalion. One from Battle Company, Sal Junta,
Okay.
and then Kyle White from 1st Platoon, and then Ryan Pitts from our platoon.
Wow.
Yeah, and yeah, some incredible men in that battalion, and that's why and the amazing thing about the 173rd is it's not a big unit, and so there's actually I was in my marked car one day going to work, and I'm driving through the city that I live in. On the back of a pickup truck, I see a 173rd sticker. And I come rolling up, and I carried the dress blues that we get. In the day we had the Class A's, the green uniform that everybody's used to seeing, the patches, your accoutrement. And dress blues a little bit different. You don't wear shoulder patches, so you get but your combat patch is a crest that you wear on your right breast pocket. Well, I took that off, and I kept that in my visor of my patrol car. And so I pull up next to this guy in traffic, and he's a Vietnam vet from the 173rd, and he and I are laughing, going back and forth with each other, and his wife's in the truck. And then probably about 6 months ago, I ran into him again at Publix.
Oh.
And for the listeners, if you don't live in Florida or anywhere that has a Publix, you're missing out because their subs are incredible. So I run into him at Publix, and he's like, "Yeah, I remember you. You're the officer that pulled up next to me and was yelling at me at the 173rd." And but when we find somebody else from the 173rd, it's like an instant connection. It's not a very big unit. And so that connection is there. And so, incredible story real quick. I'm on one of the funnest things I've done in the department is I was on before I went to our where I'm at now, I was on one of our downtown bike squads, day shift. And this is about 3 years ago. And so one of the guys from the fire department from OFD, they were out dealing with this guy that we dealt with all the time and drinking and standing out there, and we call for the fire department, right? Because he's drunk, and then he says his heart hurts, so the fire department shows up, and this guy comes walking over to me, and he goes, "Hey man, I see your tattoo." And I went, And he goes, "I was in Able Company."
Wow.
And I went, "Excuse me?" And he goes, I said, "I was in Chosen." And he goes, "I know." And so 13 years later, I run into this guy that was in our Able Company in my battalion in downtown dealing with a drunk guy. Yeah. And so
small world,
there's
man.
a few of us that live here. One of the guys in my platoon lives about an hour away. There's a few of us that live in the area, but just to go back to kind of the thing about the 173rd, and it's not a knock on any other unit. There's a 173rd. Whenever you find somebody from the herd, it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And you can feel that instant connection because it's not very big.
That is so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I want to embarrass Mike here just a little bit and read his citation for his Silver Star. So bear with me, brother. The President of the United States of America, authorized by an act of Congress, July 9th, 1918, amended by an act on July 25th, 1963, takes pleasure in presenting the Silver Star to Specialist Michael T. Denton, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against the enemy while serving as a grenadier in Company C, 2nd Battalion Airborne 503rd Parachute Infantry Regiment, 173rd Airborne Brigade Combat Team during an enemy attack on Vehicle Patrol Base, Wanat, in Kunar Province, Afghanistan, in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Specialist Denton's perseverance under fire and bravery in the face of mortal danger saved the day when almost all had been lost. Specialist Denton's valorous efforts enabling the defeat of a numerically superior enemy force are in keeping with the finest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, the 173rd Airborne Brigade Combat Team, and the United States Army. Damn, son. I wasn't even there with you. I'm tearing up just because I'm proud of you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Good stuff. I hate when I do this. There's something must be when you get old, you just start getting more sentimental about crap,
You must have real trees in your house.
Allergies, yeah, there you go. But it's just, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you guys. It's like the people I fought with in different places around the world that we've been, and there's no greater bond, there's no greater brotherhood, sisterhood than what you get out of what we do. Well, when you came back to the States after that, how long before you got out of the Army?
So I got to Walter Reed with a couple of the guys, and in July. So we went launch duel for a couple days, some surgeries, flew us out to Walter Reed, and I spent the rest of my time. I think I left there in October of 2008 because my wife was down here going to school, and I wanted to be closer to home. And so I found out that there was a medical hold unit or a medical transition unit at Fort Benning.
Mm-hmm.
So I transferred back to the Army of the Infantry, and the rest of my time until February of 2010 at that medical hold unit, and then ended up leaving the Army from there and moving down here to Orlando.
I'm trying to think about how to ask this, and if you don't want to answer, you won't hurt my feeling. I completely understand. Did you suffer from PTSD because of everything you encountered, everything you saw, everything you went through?
I had some rough patches.
Yeah. And did you receive treatment?
Yes, sir.
Were you happy with the treatment you received?
I think that at the time, I think it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
But it's also on the individual to go and make sure that you continue that treatment.
Yeah, I agree.
And I wasn't the best sometimes at making my appointments. I was kind of in a funk.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really want to talk about things. And one of my biggest problems was isolating myself a lot. Which is great to talk about because now you never want to be labeled with something. Mm-hmm. You never want somebody to tell you, oh, there's something wrong with you. Because us guys were like, no, there's something wrong with you if you think you're going to sit here and tell me there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And so through the years, just learning how to get help and telling myself, like, it's okay to get help. I'm not this broken thrift store toy that's never going to get fixed.
Yeah. Yep. The reason I bring that up, I try to bring that up based on my own experiences. After my partner was shot, I thought I was a tough guy, and I never got counseling. That was in '89, and I retired in 2013. I had not nightmares, but I had dreams about having shooting until I retired. And as time went on, they got fewer and fewer. But
yeah.
The fact is, I thought I was stupid, is what I was. And so as I went up through the ranks in DEA, I pushed hard. Whenever my guys, I didn't push hard, I made them. Whenever they were involved in a shooting incident, I would drive them to the counselor's office. Mm-hmm. I'd sit outside and make sure they went. Most guys were receptive of that and appreciative. Had one guy who was rebellious, I'll say, but he respected authority. And as a favor of me, he went through it. And I think he'd already killed 2 or 3 people. Mm-hmm. He was with the marshals before he came over to DEA. But it's that important. It's that important. Yeah. So you've been through all this, and I want to ask you one more question here, too. I don't want to dwell on this, but beat a dead horse. But did you suffer survivor's guilt from this?
Yeah, I mean, how did I live through that and the others didn't? I think you're always going to get caught up in the shoulda, coulda, woulda stuff too, which is really bad to really dive into. But when you live through something like that, it's how did I make it through and nobody else didn't? Or how did the other guys pass away and I didn't?
Yeah, by the grace of God.
Yeah, and then like we've talked about, I tell a lot of people that I'm a example of God's good grace.
Yeah, people ask me, especially after people get to know me and realize I'm an idiot. They're like, "How in the world did you survive that Escobar thing down there?" You know. And my first answer is always by the grace of God. I'm a Christian, and I think that God has a plan for us, and it wasn't for me to die in Colombia.
Absolutely, and
it wasn't His plan for you to die in Afghanistan.
Yeah, and it's you go through things to build a testament and a testimony to help others.
Yeah,
and so it's mad at him for a little bit after what happened, and I'm by no means a perfect Christian, and I mess up all the time, but I know it builds your testimony, and I was mad at him for a little while, but I think God's always going to kind of show you why He does something if you ask. Mm-hmm. Which was kind of a big reason for me to come on here. I'm honored to be able to talk to you. I'm honored that and privileged to be on here. And what I think you're doing is phenomenal. Traveling the country, talking to these guys, getting their stories out there. It's absolutely incredible. And your story is incredible. And if me coming on here and talking about some of the stuff that I went through, if that can help 1 or 2 other people, like it's been 16 years. Mm-hmm. And I feel at some point it's almost kind of selfish to kind of keep it in. Mm-hmm. But it's also kind of healing too. The more you talk about it, I think you can, because you put everything in this box, and there's only so much that box can take before that box explodes. And
Right.
if you let it out a little bit of the time, you start unpacking that box just a little bit at a time, it gets a little bit easier. And maybe there's somebody that's sitting there going, you know what, I don't think there's anybody else that's going through what I'm going through, or they're worried and upset about something that you can kind of talk to them like, hey, like you're not by yourself, and there's other people that are kind of going through that. So
yeah. And thank you for doing it. I mean, I feel awkward sometimes asking some of these questions, and that's why I always give you the option. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate your transparency.
no, absolutely, I appreciate the chance to do it, and I think it's also healthy for me to do it.
Yeah, I think so too. And we're not done yet. I mean, we just covered your military career.
Yeah,
Now, you're back in the States. You got married somewhere along the line, didn't you?
I did. Yes, sir.
Who'd you marry and how did this all come about? Just give us a little, I don't want to get too much of your personal business.
Yeah, no. So I married my wife. I met her in high school, and I was a senior. There was my third high school, and I was leaving to go to the Army, and so it was nothing serious, and but kind of liked each other a little bit, and lost contact for a little bit. So mid-tour leave of November of 2007, I came home, and I remembered her phone number, and I called her, and I went and met up with her, and 3 days later, we went on our first official date. And then a couple days after that, I was back in Afghanistan. And how incredible she is. When I got to Walter Reed on that ambulance, she was there waiting for me with her dad.
Wow. Now she's living in Florida.
She's living in Florida. Yep,
She's
born and
come up
raised
to-
here. And she came up to Washington, D.C. and
Wow.
met me there. And then my folks, of course, showed up. But I was too scared. Like, so when I got hurt, I got to Bagram later on that evening, and I called my dad, kind of told him what happened, which was crazy, right? Because everything was still kind of focused on Iraq. The news was really big into Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad actually watched and heard about what happened to us in Afghanistan. And I told him what happened, and he goes, "You were there?" And I was like, "Yeah, Dad." And I said, "Hey, can you call Christina and tell her, because I don't want to tell her I got hurt." And so he did, and so fast.
What were you afraid of?
I just didn't want to be the one to tell her. Yeah, just didn't want to be the one to tell her. And so fast forward, we got married in March of 2009.
Wow.
And we were puppies when we got married. And I've been married this year for 15, together for 17.
Excellent.
And she has been, besides, Jesus is my first rock that I can go to.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, did God hook me up with an amazing spouse to be my rock here at home. And and God bless her heart, from the time I was in the military all the way through now my law enforcement career, all the crap she's put up with, and me being gone a lot, and taking care of the kids at home, and still being there for me. I put her through a lot, and can't thank God enough for her.
Yep. I refer to those, our family members, as our unsung heroes.
Oh, yeah.
We're out running and gunning and doing what we want to do and having what we think is fun, which most people, sane people think we're idiots for doing what we do. And they're expected to stay home, and they have to abide by our schedules, regardless of what they have planned for the rest of the family. It disrupts everything that the family has planned, but yet they stand by our side and keep the home fires burning. I know it's a cliche thing to say, but that's the truth.
Oh, it is. And I know we'll probably get into it a little bit, but just the time that I spent on our SWAT team and being busy all the time. We had 3 girls. We have 3 girls, and we're, like I told you, we're in the process of adopting a little boy. And but even when the kids, I was gone a lot, my wife was always, "Well, your daddy's stopping bad guys." It was never, "Oh, Daddy's got to work again." She always, and we would get into our stuff, but she never painted me as a bad guy to the kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there were a couple times she probably could have packed her stuff and gone to stay at her parents' house, or packed my stuff and made me go leave. But God's good grace, we worked through it. And I recognized kind of early on that I was the problem and a lot of the stuff, and tried to fix it. So sorry, kind of a long tangent on that, but
no,
I married an incredible woman.
They are as equally as important as what you and I have done. It's just they give us a bastion of comfort. When I was in DEA, I got to Miami in '87. I mean, it was still running a gun every day. And when you finally get to come home, she was excited. I could come home at 3:00 in the morning, and she'd wake up. "What'd you do? What happened this time?" And she's there to listen, and it just gives you that outlet to vent, to get it off your chest.
Yeah.
And God blessed me with the ability to I don't know if I still can. I don't think I can, because I started tearing up reading your citation, and that was something to be proud of. But I've never had an issue with all the shootings I've been involved with in my life. The only one that ever bothered me was Kevin, and that was just simply because he was my partner.
Yeah.
And I didn't suffer what you went through, like PTSD. I was shell-shocked for about 2 weeks. Loud noises just startled me, scared me. My wife helped me get through that by slamming doors when I wasn't paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying, to show me it's okay. And it went away. So it's, they are angels sent from heaven. It takes a special woman to be a spouse of a police officer, of a first responder, fireman, EMT, military personnel.
Oh, yeah.
And I will always recognize them. That's one of the things I did last year at the gala was giving my little speech. And I recognized former law enforcement. And then I recognized current law enforcement. Had them stand up so everybody could see them. And we're talking 1,200 people in a big ballroom. And then I said, now, if you're a family member, a wife, a spouse, a husband, child, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, cousin, nephew, niece, whatever, stand up and recognize them. And that was, when I did that, all the cops stood up and gave them a standing ovation. It was just,
that's awesome.
People that need to be recognized because they go through every bit as bad as what we go through.
Yeah.
Anyway, now you've decided you want to be a cop.
Yes, sir.
Oh, and one other thing I want to mention about Christine is we're doing this interview on a Saturday afternoon. So I got my West Virginia Mountaineer shirt on here because they're playing Kansas State today. You got to be a good, you can't be a fair weather fan. You got to be an all-time fan if you're going to be a fan. But Mike's wife and family members have taken the kids out so that we could have this interview. So again, she's sacrificing her Saturday afternoon for you to talk to some old fart here on this interview, right? Or a dinner or something. I'll take you guys out to dinner sometime.
Oh, that'd be great.
But how did you decide to go in law enforcement? What was the attraction there?
I honestly had wanted to be a cop ever since I was a little kid. Yeah, and I was infatuated with police officers. And even when I was a little turd, still always wanted to be a cop. And God had always kind of put it on my heart to just to be in service of people. Yeah. And so when I got out, I spent a little bit of time. I was kind of in a little bit of a rough spot. I wasn't planning on getting out of the military, and I felt broken. I didn't know what I was going to do. And my wife was doing an internship with the UCF Police Department, and she ran into some guys that had retired from our department. And I got linked up with them, and I kind of went over there and worked in the records department for a little while, typing in gas receipts, real high-speed stuff. And yeah, it's a thrill. And but it was something to get me out of the house. Yeah. And I wasn't the best sometimes at showing up for that because I was just kind of down the dumps a little bit. And then one of the guys there was like, "Hey, Mike, have you ever heard of NASA's SWAT team?" And I went, "What, you mean like fighting aliens and stuff? Like, what are we talking about here in this?" Never heard about it. Yeah, never heard about it. And so they said, "Hey, maybe you should apply." And so I kind of looked up, and it was created back in 1979 to do like personal security for the astronauts. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, well, so I put in my career builder and it didn't go through. And I'm like, well, maybe I'm not what they're looking for. Well, come to find out, I think there was like some messed up stuff with the career builder and things weren't going through. Well, the range master out there happened to be our range master for OPD. So one of the guys that I met out there forwarded my resume, and I got a phone call from one of the lieutenants that said, hey, in 4 days we have tryouts. Okay, I'll be there.
This is at NASA?
And this is at NASA. So I went out there, made the team, and spent just over 2 years there. And I was like, feeling good. I'm healed up. I've got a purpose again. It was actually kind of like going back to a military platoon. Mm-hmm. And we wore Morticam. Our training was phenomenal. We were fast roping out of the helicopters. We were doing river casting. So we're staring on the skids of the bird and we're jumping out. We're doing security flights. Phenomenal training. But God had always kind of put it on my heart that I always wanted to be a police officer. So kind of calling around, not a lot of people because of my tattoos. We're taking people with tattoos, and I had dinner with one of the guys that had retired from Orlando, and he made a phone call to recruiting and said, hey, yes, we will hire him as long as he is willing to cover up his tattoos. So I rocked the long sleeve polyesters in this good old Florida weather for quite a while. But I got picked up, and my interview process, my hiring process went pretty quick. Yeah. And so I think I started it in maybe October, November of 2014. And within March of 2015, I was in the police academy, which was incredible because not only did I end up where where God wanted me to be, but they sponsored me through the academy. Well, my oldest daughter, we had her at the time, and I had a mortgage, car payments. And so that sponsorship really helped me, because the GI Bill would pay for me to go through the academy, but it wasn't going to be enough to cover all of my finances.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I have the VA coming in, the VA disability coming in, and so that kind of helped out. But I don't think the GI Bill would have been enough. They guaranteed me a job as soon as I got out. So, and my heart goes out to the people that sponsor themselves to the academy, because a lot of them are still working. They're going to school full time. They're still trying to do this. But now you've got to go out and you've got to find a police department to work for. And fortunately, I was sponsored by Orlando.
Nice.
And then as soon as I got done with the police academy, which I think put a little bit more stress on me, because you couldn't fail anything in the police academy. If you failed your first test, you only got one retake. And after that, if you failed anything else, you lost your sponsorship.
Yep.
Which kind of really
ratchets it up a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it made me work very hard. And but I had a guaranteed job when I got done. So
excellent. I read, in doing research, where, and this was a few years ago, this video I saw, 40% of OPD officers are military veterans.
Yes, sir.
Man, that's very commendable. Very commendable. I'm from Chief Smith right on down to all the other folks I know, I'm just really impressed with the agency there.
Like I said at the beginning, I'm very blessed to work with some amazing people at our department.
Yep.
We hold a high standard and for a reason.
So you've been on about 10 years now, is that correct?
I just hit 9 years this past September.
9 years, okay.
Yep, longest job I've ever had.
Well, let's hope it keeps going.
Yeah. I'm shooting for 20 right now.
Yeah, don't say anything bad about the chief. Oh, that's fun. Or the captain. So coming out, what was your first assignment after you're out of the academy? You got a field training officer, I'm assuming?
Yep, so get done, we actually do orientation. So it was 5 weeks at the time. It's changed and developed since then, but it's kind of where you do all of your paperwork. You do the tasing, you do defensive tactics, get kind of everything settled within, hey, this is what it's going to be before you start. And then you start your FTO process. And then, so I did the 4 months of FTO, 3 months, and then like a 15-day, because you work last phase, your fourth phase of FTO is 7 days. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like you're on your own, like you're a solo police officer. And then I got done with that, and I went to our West Patrol Division on midnights.
Now, West, you're not talking Disney over that area.
No, so we don't cover Disney. That's Orange County's jurisdiction, but we have Universal Studios, mm-hmm. and that's over on the west side of the city. So International Drive, we have a portion of International Drive, kind of like the Prime Outlets, the whole Kirkman corridor up to Colonial. That's all, Washington Shore, like all those, all that area on the west side of the city that belongs to us. Metro West.
Got it.
All Millennia is ours.
Are you working a one-man patrol unit or two?
We're solo cars.
Okay. And then
we had the staffing. You could say, hey, Sarge, can we ride 2-man tonight or 2-officer cars? And most of the time it was awesome. Our sergeants would say yes. Just the expectation was that you would handle, because a lot of the calls are 2-officer calls. Right. So if you were going to ride a 2-officer car, then you would go handle the 2-officer calls.
Which is, it's pretty cool, because those are the little bit more hairier calls, except for domestics.
So those are always touchy. Yeah, those are always touchy to deal with, and those are usually always a 2-officer call, if not more. Right? You ask for more officers show up to help you out, and we ride solo cars. Even still today, we'll ride solo cars. Unless you're in a specialty unit, then you'll ride with a partner.
And you mentioned earlier that you were on bike patrol for a while?
I was, yes, sir. Rode around the heart of downtown.
Was that after working the west side?
Yeah, so I worked our west side. So the majority, up until I got to my current assignment, spent working the road, and worked the West Patrol Division on midnights. And then I went to our Central Patrol Division, which is like our Paramore area and downtown mm-hmm. area. And I worked that on midnights. And then I did our Paramore bike squad. And then over to our downtown day shift bike squad for just over 3 years before getting to my current assignment.
Wow. You worked day shift?
I did, yes, sir.
Man, I was a cop for 12 years before I came a Fed. I never, other than filling in for somebody, I was never assigned to days.
Yeah, there was always a stigma that nothing ever happens on days. There's always a stigma that, hey, nothing ever happens on days. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, I've been to a lot of emergency channels on day shift.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference is I can see people now.
Yeah, a big difference, right?
And I can see somebody running away from me.
Yeah. Actually, and the reason I knew about the bike patrol, not only that you mentioned it earlier in our interview, but I found a video back in March of 2021 where you and some other officers went to. It looks like a truck had gone over into a canal or off a bridge or something, and the driver was trapped and it was on fire.
Yeah, he was pinned in there.
Yeah. And what did you do?
We got down there, and my partner and I, actually one of my best friends here at the department, we actually went to the academy together, and we got to spend 3 years with each other on downtown bikes. We showed up and tried to get down there. We tried prying open the doors to get to him, and there was an off-duty firefighter that he just ended up kind of disappearing, but he was down there with us trying to help us out. But we were talking to him. By God's good grace, that guy was still alive. He was smashed up in there, but yep, we tried to help him out. So
Did he survive?
he did. Our department showed up and helped out.
Yeah.
Took over.
Well, you're downplaying. Mr. Humble here, we got you received an award for that, right?
I did.
Yeah. So you did your job. And then there's an event that happened here in Orlando that the world knows about. It was the Pulse nightclub, the nightclub that a random shooter went in and killed a bunch of innocent people.
Yes, sir.
It looks like you responded to that also.
I did. I was a 6-month solo officer when that happened.
Wow. And so what was your participation in that investigation?
So I was already working another call, and I just happened to be at our old headquarters building, which is right there outside of downtown. And the shots fired call came over the radio. By the time I made it there, I believe it was around the time he'd already kind of barricaded himself into the bathroom. But I found some victims along one of the roadways and threw a tourniquet on one of the guys, tried to help out some others, and then me and a couple deputies and I that were out there made our way and actually went inside the back of the nightclub and kind of helped pull some people out of there and held security until the SWAT team showed up and took over from there.
And let me just say right now, for all the listeners, I don't care what your lifestyle is. You deserve to be safe. Nobody's got the right to come in and commit mass murder like that. That's completely against everything we represent. And I'm speaking on behalf of every police officer, every military veteran, every first responder in the entire United States, as well as the honest people around the world. Whether you approve of what's going on in that nightclub or not, it's your personal opinion. But all of our opinions should be, everybody should be safe, especially in the country of the United States. We're supposed to be the leading country in the world. Well, we're the leading country in mass shootings. And I'm not getting political here. Love my guns, just like most everybody else does. But I just want to put that out there. That's just, there's no justifiable reason to go commit an act of violence like that. None whatsoever.
And innocent people don't deserve that. They should be able to go out and have a good time and not have to worry about something like that.
So after, and for that, you received the Department's Award of Merit. I read about that. I saw your picture and everything.
Yes, sir.
I even found a video, and this is from November of 16, for ladies and gentlemen who are listening. You can go on YouTube and find this video, and you were recognized. OPD was honoring its veterans, its military veterans, and you were the topic for that one. And it lays out some good information in there about you.
Yes, sir. So, kind of gave him a brief about what had happened at Wanat, and yes, sir.
That's where I got some of the information from you. You didn't think I'd find it because you didn't tell me about that, did you?
I forget a lot.
Yeah, listen to you. It's so and then what is your current assignment?
I'm one of our in-service training coordinators.
So he works at the police academy, everybody. That's what that means.
Yep. So we do all of our in-service training for our officers. So you get done with the police academy and whether you're in orientation with us or you have been a police officer for 20 years, FDLE mandates that there are certain things that you have to in order to keep up your certificate, police officer, you have to attend mandatory training. Mm-hmm. And so that's what my partners and I do there now. And so it's neat that when you travel around and you go to instructor courses and you get certified in all the high liabilities, and so you can teach all those tactics, driving, first aid, active assailant or active shooter training is now mandated by FDLE. And we do that every year with our officers and especially with our school resource officers. And so that's an FDLE mandated training now that we conduct. And so listening to other agencies, their in-service training coordinators, they just kind of create the training and schedule it. It's neat that we actually are the lead instructors for our blocks. So we go out and we teach our own product.
Nice.
And we teach and we see every officer come through and give them the instruction. And it's really cool too, because we also learn stuff. So you get some of the older officers, senior officers to come in there, and while you're going through your training and talking about it and showing and teaching, they'll throw in. And if anybody has anything during the classes, which is really neat, we tell them, hey, if anybody has anything, please, we're always open to improvements, criticism. Nobody's going to get their feelings hurt. If you're doing something that works a lot better than what we're showing, and we've had that happen, and now we're okay, great, thank you. Now I'm going to pass it on to the masses.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's progressive training.
Yeah, and for me to, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Also, and for me to be in that spot with only having 9 years on as a police officer, I'm very blessed to be there. It is a phenomenal spot to be at, and to learn from the senior guys that I work for.
Yeah, you're teaching everybody else how to stay alive. That's a calling right there.
It's a humbling job.
Yeah. So Mike was gracious enough to invite me down to the academy here. Maybe 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I came over to our training building. Yeah.
Got to go in and see everything. I mean, you guys got some state of the art equipment in there. You just had gotten in the new, was it a 320-degree shoot don't shoot scenario system?
Yeah, and like new virtual reality that you can kind of create. You can either have a storefront, you can have a house, you can have a bedroom. We can create all these different scenarios. One of the great things, you coming out to see our facility, and I know we talked about this there, anybody around Central Florida, Orlando police, and you guys are paid really well, and we are. The city takes very good care of us. Mm-hmm. But we also work very hard for what we have. Awesome thing, and especially like going to other instructor courses, is we're very blessed to have an indoor range. We're not out in the heat all day. We're very blessed to have the shoot house that we have where you can move around walls and change up doors, and other agencies will come out and use that. Mm-hmm. And so it's a brotherhood. Hey, we have something. If you guys want to come out and use it, we like to share our blessings with others. So if we have nothing going on, you want to come out and use our shoot house, please use our shoot house. If you want to come out and use our range, please come use our range.
It's benefiting nobody sitting there, and nobody's in there taking advantage of the facilities.
Yeah. And so we have people come out all the time, and you go out there and you talk to them, and you rub elbows and make connections. And so we're incredibly blessed. In the training on top of that, we try to do all of our training to where it's a live role playing scenario, which I think people benefit to learn from.
Absolutely.
Hands down, probably one of the best ways to teach. So if you haven't been in a certain situation before, if we can create that and put that in your head and put you through that scenario, then when you come to that scenario, maybe it won't be as you didn't hear before. Yeah. And this is what I've done. And it's also great for us in the unit because we learn something every time we do a class.
Yep.
I just get to see more reps. So it's great. We are very well taken care of.
Well, and the guys that come in and, kind of poo-poo Orlando PT because you have it so nice over here. Hey, brother, you applied for where you're working. Put your application in over here. OPD's hiring.
We actually do have a ton of officers that come from other agencies. And again, I tell everybody how blessed we are because you hear horror stories sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And so very well taken care of. And
excellent.
Went to a firearms instructor. Everyone's like, OPD's here. But it's all in fun, making fun of each other. And
exactly. Don't take any of it personal.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was funny.
And we're coming up on the end of the discussion here, but I just want to ask you, what advice would you have for anybody? What takeaway lessons can people have from what they've heard you talk about today? Lessons learned from OPD, from the Army, survival, dealing with life and death situations. Just some final thoughts on your part.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I want people to know, and it's coming more to light these days, the stigma that you can't talk about having a hard time, or you can't feel like you can open up because, right, and especially in law enforcement, I'm scared that if I say, hey, I'm kind of broken right now, I'm kind of hurting, that they're gonna take my badge, they're gonna put me off the road, I'm not gonna be able to work anymore. And so, stigma that you can't talk about it. Look at a lot of these top tier military veterans that are coming out and going, yeah, I was having a rough time, I was broken, and then they get into drinking, and then the affairs start, and all this stuff starts going downhill in their lives, and their lives become a mess because of that macho, I don't want to talk about this, I keep everything inside. And I was like that too for a while, keep everything in, suffer in silence. But to tell everybody that if you, especially like my family doesn't deserve for me to be down in the dumps and broken. Like, right. God put me as the shepherd of my flock for a reason. And if I'm not doing a good job at it, what's to say that he won't take it take it away and give it to somebody else that will take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay to tell somebody you're hurting.
Yes.
And tell somebody that you're feeling a little bit broken, because you're not broken forever. And there's this stigma that, oh, well, if you are diagnosed with this or you're diagnosed with that, or like that's you for the rest of your life. And that's not true. And I go back and I always thank God and appreciate the fact that he gave me a mindset where I can make my way through stuff. Okay, I'm down now, but you know what? I'm going to get up and I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to get up and I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go out and I'm going to ask for help, or I'm going to go find somebody to talk to. And it's okay. Yep. Because we need you here. And turning to the bottle, turning to drugs, or turning to a gun is not the way to go, because none of that is going to lead to anything good. And so it's okay to ask for help, because you're not broken for forever. And you go through all this stuff, and I talk, when I it's interesting having conversations with people, like for the military, it was thousands of miles away. And I'm always going to have those memories. Any given day, I can see, what happened and what not. Taste and smells remind you of stuff. That was thousands of miles away. And what I tell people about police officers is, you live in a constant state of reminder as a police officer. That corner that I fought somebody on, every time I bypass that corner, that could come, oh, hey, that corner right there, or that house right there. And you pass by those same places every single day. And so cops live in a constant state of reminder. And if you don't transfer out of that area, and even if you do, and you have to go back into that area for a call to cover another unit for another sector that's busy, we live in a constant state of reminder. Yeah. And so I just want everybody to know that it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay because you first have to tell yourself that, you know what, something's a little off, something's a little wrong, but I need to get better. I need to fix it. Yeah. And there's a lot of great organizations out there that will do that. And Ryan and I get as cops, we're professional skeptics, and we constantly think of the worst case scenario because we see people's worst case scenarios, and so we kind of are on guard a little bit more. And hey, well, if I say something, what if these people don't like the police, and their goal is to turn around and say, hey, that he's doing this or he's saying that, or now we're in fear that something's going to come back on us. That's not the case, and it's okay to admit that. It's okay to find, I need some help.
Absolutely. That's, ladies and gentlemen, that's the most important thing out of this entire interview with Mike here. You can forget everything else we say, especially the crap that I say. I just try to keep the thing going. But that's the most important thing. If you need help, it's available. There's a national crisis hotline here in the United States. The number is 988. You can call it. You can dial 988. You can text 988. It's manned 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You might not talk to a therapist, but they will get you to a professional. So there's no reason to go through any of this anxiety, pressure, stress, whatever you want to call it, suicidal thoughts. If you need help, it's available. Okay. So, Mike, I can't thank you enough for just being so open and honest with what you've told us about today. I've been through hairy situations, nothing like compared to what you were into. Thank you for talking about the PTSD side of things, because that's so important. I think we are becoming more cognizant of that here in our lifestyles now in the United States, where we are trying to help people that do need some, if nothing more, just somebody to talk to. Sometimes that can be all you need. But if you talk to a professional, they know the things to tell you. They know, they'll talk to you about triggers and things like that. And it's just so important. There's nothing more important than what we talk about on here when it comes to self-preservation, how to look out for each other, how to heal from things, from seeing and participate in things that humans should not ever have to go through.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, brother, thank you. An honor, true honor to have you on here. The friendship has started here. It's not gonna dwindle down, and which means I'll probably be in a pain in the ass to you. You keep calling you, hey Mike, can I come do this, or what are you doing over here? Or,
send it.
Yeah, it's gonna be good, man.
Yeah, no, I'm very honored and privileged to be asked to come on here and be able to talk and just be a chance to meet you and be able to share this stuff. That if it could help one person, then shout. Then I mean, it's definitely worth it. So,
well, I'm always available to you guys. That includes everybody in your unit. That actually includes the whole Orlando PD and the SOs around here, and FDLE and FHP and all the other agencies that are here. If there's anything I can do to help any of you, I want to do it. I don't say that meaninglessly. It's just because I love the cop environment. I love the law enforcement culture. Also, one more recognition to your wife and family for for what they've gone through. With I'm sure that you're not always a peach to live with like I am, because my wife's so fortunate to have me around all the time now that I'm retired. I don't understand why she's always willing to drive me to the airport so I can go on a trip to get me out of the house.
Yeah, she always usually has the bags packed. It's crazy.
I
Yeah,
don't understand that.
my wife has been phenomenal. I can come home and I can tell her anything. And there are certain times where, okay, I'll spare her of this or I'll spare her of that. But if there's one person in this world that I know that I can go and I can talk to and I can open up to, who's never going to look at me sideways, it's going to be my wife.
Yep.
It took me almost getting punched in the face. And if you don't mind, for the listeners, I'll tell everybody I was working a lot, and what made me step back from a lot of the extracurricular stuff that I was doing for the department was we got a page for a search warrant kind of last minute for the next day. And my middle daughter at the time she loves coming out and working out with me out in the garage. And so she saw me get my uniform out of the back of my patrol car. And she looked at me and she said, "Daddy, I thought you didn't have to work today." I said, "Well, baby, somebody did something bad." And so I closed the hatch of my car and inside, and my wife's kind of tearing up. And and we all know this from being law enforcement officers for a long time. Sometimes you become numb to certain things and you can allow yourself to get kind of callous. And it's kind of like, well, why are you crying? I've seen people and they have reasons to cry. Like, why are you crying right now? And she said the other day, Bryn, my middle daughter, was playing and talking to herself. And she said, "Hey, who are you talking to?" And my oldest daughter was like, "Oh, you didn't know, Mommy? She plays with imaginary daddy because daddy's gone all the time."
Oh, gee.
It crushed me. And it literally felt like somebody had just punched me in the face.
Oh.
And so I made the determination that day that I was going to leave everything extracurricular that I was doing, which led me to going to, which I'd already kind of been on the day shift schedule for a little while. Phenomenal schedule. I got a full weekend off. The second weekend was a full weekend off. Mm-hmm. But it really put in perspective that I was the problem.
Yeah.
Nobody else was making me do all this. I was staying as busy as I could. I was wanting to be the best at everything that I was doing. What I was doing to my family is not helping.
Yeah.
And so when I talk about my wife, Daddy's got to go get a bad guy, never talking badly about me, oh, Daddy's, gone again. It was always, Daddy has to go stop a bad guy. That right there punched me in the face.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm going to step back because I'm the problem. I'm the one that's choosing to do all this. And I'm the one that's choosing to do all that. And it's nobody else. It's not my family. It's not the department. It's me asking to do all this extra stuff. But I realized I needed to put my time back into my family, because when I'm done here, one of the scariest thoughts is I'm going to die alone.
Yep.
And for 20 years from now, and the kids don't want to show up for holidays, that kind of bothered me. And so I realized I need to take a step back and I need to focus solely on them, because I give all this time public service, which is what I want to do. And it's God gave me a servant's heart.
Yep.
But when I'm not at work, I need to give my time to my family. And I personally was not good at the balance sometimes. So I want to be the best here, but I want to be the best here. And I don't ever want to be, my biggest fears is being an unreliable person.
Yep.
And I never want to be unreliable anywhere. And,
especially your family.
Yeah, it took me a little bit to see it, and I'm glad I nipped it quickly.
Yeah.
And so again, coming on here, if there's somebody that's kind of struggling with that, I hope that this helps somebody.
Yeah.
I hope somebody can see that, maybe I need to step back, and when I'm not giving my all at work, that's my time to give it all. But when I'm at home, I need to be giving all my time at home. As
fortunate as I was to work some of the cases that I had in DEA, and, the notoriety that came out of some of that, when I retired, DEA continued.
Yeah.
How'd that happen? I left. I thought they would fold. Not really.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes we get that.
We not do good without me.
Yeah, exactly. So family is so important. So it's, I always say that, in my opinion, our priority should be God, family, the job. Mm-hmm. The truth is, mine has always been the reverse. It's always been job. Well, actually, it was job. Yeah. And then everything else came after that.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. Last night I went to, there's a jailhouse mission group here called Inside Out Jailhouse Ministries. And a good friend of mine who used to be the president of the Hells Angels in Chicago, a guy named Mel Chancey, was going to be one of the guest speakers. And Mel is a very strong Christian now. He's got a strong ministry called John 3:16. He does a devotional on Instagram every single day. If you haven't seen it,
God bless him. That's awesome.
This man is like a muscle with legs walking around. He's 55 years old, and he's still, when he flexes, it's like, I might get a little bulge here. He might have 2 or 3 bulges pop. I mean, he's
his
still
biceps got biceps.
My gosh. But I've been, and the head of the CEO of Core Medical Group, which I've started supporting them last year, was there. And this is something I wanted to attend. And I went, it was up in Winter Park, so it was like 45-minute drive from the house. And Connie, my wife, wasn't feeling too good yesterday. And Mel had just started speaking. And he's like 10 minutes into his talk, and he's laying it out there. My wife texted me. She said, "I'm throwing up now. Could you come home?" In the past, I would have ignored that, and I would have stayed till the end.
Yep.
Last night, I'm sitting at the front table where the dignitaries sit, and I got in front of everybody, right in front of Mel as he's talking. I said, "I'm sorry, got to go."
Yeah.
And booked it home. But it's taken me this long. I'm an old man now, and I'm just now realizing where my priorities should be. So thank you for pointing that out to everybody.
Absolutely. I did that. I've realized now that my kids aren't paranoid about me working anymore.
Yeah.
And
my gosh,
it took some time to kind of heal that say, I wouldn't call it paranoia, but that worry.
Yeah.
And now they're not as worried as much anymore. And they know now that, hey, there are certain times that work is going to have to come before family, because this is our livelihood. This is how I pay the bills. This is how I take care of you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten a lot better at learning how to balance them. And some guys are incredible and they can balance everything. I just wasn't one of those at the time.
Me either. All right, brother. Listen, it's been a true honor, pleasure.
Yes, sir,
I'm so proud
Thank
of you, what you've done in the military, what you're doing, continuing to do for the citizens here in Orlando and Orange County and Florida, as the rest of our country. To have somebody on here like you and not say that you're a hero, and I know you won't admit to it because heroes never do, but you're a freaking hero. And it is an honor. The transparency you showed us today and just being willing to talk about all the things you talked about. I hope somebody does get a good meaning out of this message. Folks, if you need to contact somebody, you can call 988. I gave you that number already. You can reach out to me through our website, gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com. You can contact me through YouTube. You can leave comments there. If you're needing help or you want more information, don't hesitate. Don't wait. To all the families of our first responders and our military and our law enforcement professionals out there, thank you for what you do, our unsung heroes. And for all our listeners that continue to come back every week, do me a favor, tell your friends about it. Tell them to come on over and give us a shot. If you're looking on YouTube, do me a favor and hit that subscriber button. I'm trying to build the channel here on YouTube. I just started that a couple months ago, and it's slowly building, but I'd like to get it up so more people can hear stories like Mike's. This one, I don't think you'll hear Mike's story anywhere else. I hope he gets more comfortable talking about it because people need to hear what he went through and how he survived. But God bless you all. Thank you for coming this time, and I look forward to seeing you next week. God bless.
Thank you, sir.
Well, unfortunately, that's it for this week's episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. Thank you, folks, so much for taking the time to see and hear some of the best true crime content you can find anywhere. None of this would be possible without your support. If you didn't know this already, Game of Crimes is now on YouTube. Just type in Game of Crimes Podcast in the YouTube search bar. You can send me your comments on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or to our email address, which is gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com. Our website, it's gameofcrimespodcast.com. That's where you'll find all our episodes, books written by our guests, merchandise, and more. If you're looking for even more content, now go over to patreon.com/gameofcrimes and sign up. There you'll find several bonus episodes each month, ranging from serious and current topics to some silly and fun events. And you can even get early access to each week's interviews before they drop on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can even subscribe for free and hear the first 5 minutes of each episode, and that's to help you decide if you'd like to spend some of your hard-earned cash to hear more. That's patreon.com/gameofcrimes. To all our guests here on Game of Crimes, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. I mean that sincerely. Thank you for your service to your communities, your countries, and for taking the time to tell us about your adventurous lives. May God bless and protect all the men and women in law enforcement, our military, and all of our first responders. And you know what? This goes for all of our listeners as well. Thank you for your continued support. And just one last thought here. It's okay for us to have different ideas and different opinions, but it doesn't mean we can't continue to be friends. All right, my final thank you. Thanks for joining me again to play the biggest, the baddest, the most dangerous game of all, the game of crimes. I'll see y'all next week.